tonight. I'm sure you all are aware of our organization, the Central Texas Young Farmers Coalition. And yeah, so basically we're a group of young farmers who are part of the National Young Farmers Coalition, which is a organization that exists to help provide education and advocacy and connection for young farmers. There's chapters all over the country, and then we're the Central Texas chapter. And so we're really excited to talk about this grant again. We did a panel on it last year, and that was really informative and helpful. I think that pretty much, I want to say the majority, if not all, of the young farmers that I know who have started their own operations in the past, 5 to 10 years have gone through the Young Farmer Grant Program. And I believe some people have gone through it and gotten help with funding sort of early on in their operation, and then also gone back and applied for it a second time even. So I think one of the things that's so cool about it to me is that it can really be a resource at the outset, but then also something that you can return to when you have special projects and those sorts of things going on. That was something I learned last year and thought that was a really cool feature of the grant. So yeah, I think without further ado, just so we have plenty of time, I'm going to hand it over to Kat Neilson, and she's our TDA grant specialist who's going to be kind of diving into the ins and outs of the grant. And then after she's done with her presentation, I think we'll have Leah kind of go over her project and the way that the grant helped her with that. And then also Tim Auld is here as well. So we'll get kind of some initial information about the grant, and then a couple of different projects that were funded with the help of the grant for some context. And then I think if we can go ahead and save our questions for the end, if everyone wants to just sort of write them down as they're going up, just to make sure that we have time for everyone to present tonight. So Kat, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. Sorry. Apparently I haven't used my voice enough today. Well, thanks again for having me here tonight. I am, again, maybe next year we'll get to do it in person again, but these are the times, right? So I have been with TDA now for about 3 years. This is one of my main grants that I oversee. I also oversee the specialty crop block grant. So if you ever go into research or if you're affiliated with university, you might ever come across that grant. But the Young Farmer Grant is kind of TDA's baby, you could say, because it is one of the only grants we actually have for agricultural operations that go directly to producers, farmers, ranchers, just agricultural businesses in general that help get new people into the industry, as well as expand their current industry. So I did do some digging today, and I found a PowerPoint presentation. I did not put it together, but I did go through it and try to update it. I'm going to say it's kind of text heavy, but all the information that you're going to find on this PowerPoint is either going to be in the application or in the request for application. So I know that this is recorded, which is great, but if you do have, you want to go back and see this information, it is available. So with that, we're going to see how good I am at sharing my screen. Share screen. Okay. I'm going to share. I'm going to do this. We'll start. Awesome. Okay. Can somebody give me a thumbs up to make sure y'all can see that? Okay. Okay. So Young Farmer Grant Program. Program history. So One thing about the Young Farmer Grant is that it is overseen by the Texas Agricultural Finance Authority. This is it is a volunteer board of directors pretty much that oversees TAFA. They do oversee multiple programs, including loan programs, like the Agricultural Loan Guarantee. They have the capability of doing bond programs for other types of loans and investments. So this program is a little unique because it is funded through the Young Farmer Tag Fee. If you ever have to, if you have a farm license plate for your farm vehicles, you'll see that there's a Young Farmer Tag Fee. So that's part of where the funding for this comes from. If you've ever been curious about where the money is coming from, it's funded by your fellow farmers, actually. So that is actually important that it's overseen by TAFA, because this board of the directors is who actually selects the awardees. It is not TDA staff. So just as an FYI there. So the purpose is to provide financial assistance in the form of a dollar for dollar matching grant funds. So what's the difference between a grant and a loan? A grant is you are awarded the funds and you do not have to pay them back unless there's a breach of agreement, but those are very technical things. But and a loan, of course, is you are given the money, but then you are expected to pay it back. So of course, grants are what everybody wants because everybody likes free money. It's not really free, but the whole purpose of the grant is to get younger generations of farmers engaged in agricultural operations. So let's see, program goals. Sorry, my dog was in here wanting his dinner. So you know, the purpose, the reason that they started this grant, and it started over 10 years ago, was to grow and support Texas agriculture. As most people know, the average age of farmers, especially in Texas, is older, and it's getting older. And so their purpose was to try to encourage more young people to get into farming, as well as overcome the hurdles of getting into farming even on a small scale, because as you probably all know, it can be very expensive, especially to get started. Let me skip that stuff. Okay, so structure of the Young Farmer Grant. There are 2 rounds per year, the spring and the fall. We refer to them as round 1 and round 2. The grant term, that the grant round that is coming up, is 2021 round 2. So there's $300,000 allotted per year for this grant. So they divide it up over the 2 rounds, about 150,000 per round. They do have a little bit of wiggle room, let's say in round 1, if they like, oh, I love these projects, but it's going to go over $150,000, they might award more. They might go up to 160, 170, but that also means that in round 2, they don't have as much funds to award. So the other thing that they might do is they're like, okay, well, we've got these 11 projects, but it goes over our threshold of 150,000. So we're going to ask everybody to cut their budget by 10%, and that will keep us within our budget. So just know that has happened, where the board has asked every single project they want to award to actually decrease their budget amount by a little bit, so that they can fund more projects at a lower amount. So grant awards range from $5,000 minimum to a $20,000 maximum. And I'm going to get more into the nuts and bolts of what that means. But if you ask for only $5,000, if your total project is only $5,000, the award amount is $2,500, and that actually will not qualify. So it does need to be a significant, relatively significant amount to qualify. The other thing about this grant that is very important is a reimbursement grant. So there are no funds up front. So that is something to keep in mind, that you do have to have enough capital to make your purchases, and then you submit for reimbursement to get the award funds. This is a competitive program. As I said, the TAFA board is the one who, it is the group that evaluates the applications and then determines which projects receive funding. We do receive more applications than we are able to fund. One of the questions I get a lot is how many people actually apply in any given time, any given round. It's anywhere between 40 to 60 applications, and they usually fund anywhere between 10 to 12. So it's about a 20 to 25% award rate. I always tell people, if you don't get it the first time, apply the next time, because many people have gotten it after they've applied a couple times. It just kind of depends on the other applications and what the TAFA board is looking to fund that round. So who can apply? This is the biggest qualifier for this grant, is that the applicant has to be between the ages of 18 and under 46. At the time of the application deadline. This is in the statute. This is not something that we choose. This is something that was written actually into the law. We can't change it. Only legislators can change it. So, and the reason for that is, again, this program was aimed to promote younger generations to get into farming, or to be able to expand their capacity. And we hear this a lot because they're like, well, I'm about to retire and I want to start a farm. Well, that wasn't really the purpose of the grant. They wanted to establish more career farmers throughout their entire lives. The applicant must reside and operate in Texas. They have to be a U.S. citizen. Obviously, they're engaged in an agricultural operation in Texas. It does have to be an ag business. Something like a petting zoo, even though there's animals and livestock involved, that's not considered an agricultural business. If you, though, are into artificial insemination and you're performing the artificial insemination or the ultrasounds, this was something I had to look up, but that's directly related to agriculture and production of agriculture. So that would fall under that category. This is also more just a nuts and bolts thing, but if you already have a current or open young farmer grant, you cannot apply. However, if you have grants from other institutions or another TDA grant, which would be really rare since we really don't have any others, but if you have like one through the Farm Services Agency or the USDA, like an NRCS grant for high tunnel, maybe that's when I hear a lot, you are still eligible to apply. It's just specifically if you have a TDA grant with us currently, and it's usually an open young farmer grant, you have to wait until your current young farmer grant is officially closed to be able to apply again. Okay, so here's where I'm going to talk a little bit about the award amount and the matching, the one-to-one. This is a matching grant. So for every dollar you spend, the award matches it by $1. So if you're going to buy 10 cows for $10,000, your award amount would be $5,000 and the matching would be $5,000. Being a reimbursement grant, you would spend the $10,000 and then you would submit the payment request and proof of that you bought your 10 cows, and then we would reimburse you the $5,000 of award funds. So what that means is that your total projects, the minimum has to be a $10,000 project and the maximum is $40,000. Now, we always encourage a one-to-one match. That is minimum. You can do more. You can say, okay, my total project is $50,000. I'm going to ask for $20,000 as an award and I'm going to match it by 30. You can do it, but I just actually discourage you from doing it, because what that means is when it's in the agreement, when you have a different ratio than one-to-one, to get your award money, you have to show the larger amount. So to get your 20,000, then you're obligated to show 30,000. when really you could just cut your budget back and do 2020. It gives you more flexibility. The math's a lot easier. The accounting's a lot easier. Um, so, even though your project's going to be 50,000, you can say, yeah, over here, I'm going to, spend 10,000 more dollars of my own to buy 10 more cows. But for the grants purposes, I'm going to spend $40,000 on cows. And I'm using cows just because it's the easiest. It's a really easy example. I know most of you guys actually are farmers and into fruits and vegetables and crop growing. So, oh, okay. Sources for matching funds. The matching funds can come from personal savings. You do not actually have to prove to us, you don't have to show us a bank statement. You've got $40,000 in the bank. It is more of a good faith that you say, yes, I'm going to be able to pay for this project and then submit the required documentation. You do not have to make all of the purchases at once. You can spread it out over the grant term, which is 15 months. I'll come back to that. And so that way, I know a lot of people, they're like, okay, I've got $10,000 now, and I'm going to spend $10,000 on cows, and then I'm going to get my $5,000 back, and then I can use that $5,000 6 months down the road and then buy 10 more cows, and so they can spread it out so that you're not having to fork up that much money all at once and then only get one reimbursement. You can spread it out. Other sources for matching funds that people use are loans. There are quite a few, like an agricultural credit union or a traditional bank. For loans, we do require mostly like a pre-approval letter that just states from the bank that if you are awarded the Young Farmer Grant, they will loan you the matching $20,000. And that suffices. I do know that there are this has been done a lot using loans, and there's even some smaller ag lenders that are really involved in it, which is pretty cool. A gift. So let's say your grandma is like, I will totally give you $20,000 if you get this grant to match, do your project, start your cow farm. I know, cow ranch. In the example of a gift, they would just need to supply a letter from your grandmother saying, yes, I'm committed to giving $20,000 to my grandson if he gets this grant. And again, sometimes there's project investors. Some people use the money that they make from their own business and they reinvest it, and that's how they're going to do the matching. So, I mean, we're pretty flexible on where you get those matching funds, but sometimes we do require some extra documentation. So your project, what does this project mean? So a project, instead of just saying, I need money for my operation to operate, and those are pretty much sustainable operating expenses. That's not a project. That's what you need to make anyways to exist. And the Young Farmer Grant, the purpose of it is to actually have a specific goal in mind that is going to actually achieve your startup or to achieve an expansion. So you do have a tangible goal that you're going for. For example, so let's take my cow example. I have 0 cows and I want to start a herd, and I want to expand it to 10 cows. Well, so that's my goal. That's going to be my measurable. At the end of this project, I should have 10 cows. I should have established my cow ranch. The projects range from anything and everything, and actually, yeah, so here's some examples. It can be aquaculture, like hydroponics, apiaries, if you want to establish dairy operations, horticulture, viticulture, if you want to establish vineyards because you want to do a winery eventually. We've had meaderies be established. He started his apiaries and then he bought the meadery equipment. Wildlife operations with special exotic deer has been a big one. And then of course, livestock and traditional crop operations, all the way from huge cotton farms, cotton and rice farms, to very small independent farms that are doing local production for farmers markets. So we've also had urban gardens, like urban container hydroponic type structures. So it really is variable as long as it falls under that agricultural operations. Okay, and then here's the 15. Okay, so the timeline, the 15-month term to complete projects and meet your measurables. So let's take an apiary. You're like, okay, I have 15 months to establish 5 more hives. And I need to get all of my honeybee equipment purchased. You have 15 months to do that. Okay, so let's talk about eligible expenses. And I am trying to watch my time. And I might actually already be out of time.
You're good, Kat. I think
okay.
if you want to, yeah, if you want to, take 5-10 more minutes, I think.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I read through it. I'm like, oh, it's not that long, but when you talk. Okay, so for eligible expenses, these are the main buckets. We've got personnel costs. Now this is, it can't be for your own time or your own salary or your immediate family members. This is a change. So some of our past grantees, the family members were not included in this, but it has to be hired outside help that is eligible. We have contracts so that if you hire someone to come in, like a plumber or whatever, an irrigation installer, fence installer, those are considered contractual personnel cost. Supplies and direct operating costs. These are pretty self-explanatory: material, supplies, parts. In the case of livestock, if you have to purchase fencing or veterinary costs, vaccines, there's a bazillion things under that one. Lease expenses. It can be used for paying if you lease land or if you need to lease equipment. So if you need to lease a post hole digger or something, or a trench digger, that it can be used for that. Other expenses that do not fall into this can be, it can be kind of anything. Fencing usually kind of goes under other. Little bit larger expenses that might not be technically like supplies, like seeds or whatever, but you might have other things. Also, this one has changed this year, the non-capitalized equipment. So what this is pieces of equipment are allowable. However, their acquisition cost has to be under $5,000. That's the total cost. So if you have a tractor for $15,000, you can't use Young Farmer Grant for this. If you want to purchase a used hay rake attachment and it's under $5,000, that's fine. This has changed. They did used to allow up to $5,000 in reimbursement, but now it's actual total acquisition price. And that has to do with a technicality in the law, which is unfortunate. Okay, ineligible expenses. Okay, so obviously anything that is prohibited by state and federal law: alcohol, entertainment, tips, gratuity, contributions, charitable or political, travel, or meals. The other one I will add to this is marketing swag. So if you are trying to market and you want to buy people t-shirts or like giveaways, those are also not going to be allowed. This is another key thing to understand about this grant is the expenses purchased outside the grant term period. So anything before the grant term begins is not eligible. So you can't buy something now and then apply for the grant, get the grant, and then ask for reimbursement for something that you bought before you were awarded. So it's very important that whatever project you choose can be done down the road, that it can wait. You cannot use this grant to purchase land. You also cannot use it if it's not in your project budget or it is not meeting the intent of the program. So if you're trying to be like, oh, I'm doing a cow project, but I would like to also buy some sunflower seeds, that doesn't work, because you have been awarded a project based on the project. I'm sorry, you've been awarded the monies based on the project that you submitted and the budget you submitted. Now we have some flexibility so that, if things need to change a little bit, but you're still meeting your cow project, you're still buying cows, or you need to I need to buy more feed for the cows. Well, it's still cows, but it's still related. But all that kind of stuff does have to be pre-approved. So if you just come to me and be like, oh, well, I just decided to buy this, and I'm like, well, I don't know if that's allowed. And then here's again, this is your applicant's own services or immediate family is not allowed. So you can't pay yourself. And then again, this is the equipment over $5,000 is not allowed. And then here's the other capital expenditures for improvement. So what this is the value of, if you want to build a structure, a permanent structure, or dig a well, those are all considered capital improvements and are not allowed. Now, if you have an existing well and you need a new pump, sure, that flies under supplies and materials. Okay, so right. Okay, so that one I've already talked about. It's cost reimbursements. I see this is, again, sorry, I'm just used to doing this for the first time with this PowerPoint, but just going over some key points. For the grant term that is coming up, the estimated term date starts August 1st, and then you have 15 months. So it ends October 31st of next year. So it's a pretty good long time. I'm going to just kind of breeze over this. This is in the application, the letters of support. It's just kind of talking about what they're looking for in the letters of support. Obviously you want to talk about the relationship that they have with you, specific skills. Pretty much the review committee is just wanting somebody, an outsider's point of view, saying, yes, this person is responsible, they're going to follow through, and they are knowledgeable enough to do the project. So the upcoming deadline is Thursday, April 8th by 5 p.m. Please note the time, because if it does come in after 5 p.m., even 5:01, it is disqualified. So they're very, very strict about the timeline. And I always encourage people to get it in early. If you get it in early, I can take a look at it and be like, quick go through it and make sure that at least everything is there. I can't tell you what's missing, but I can be like, maybe you should go look at that section. And and because if anything is missing from the application, if you have forgotten to check a box or not answered something, you're also disqualified. So a lot of times someone doesn't put their age in, even if we have their driver's license, which we could calculate it, you still have to disqualify you because you didn't actually write your age in. So again, because it's a competitive grant, that's just how they work. The application checklist, all of this stuff is on the application itself, as well as in the what we call the request for applications, which is the instruction booklet. If you have any questions about the tax forms like the Schedule F or, any of the requirements, don't ever hesitate to give me a call. I'm always happy to help answer questions and get you the information that you need. So just some tips for the grant writing process to make sure you allow plenty of time to complete the application. Do not wait till the day of, because you will not complete it on time. It is too labor intensive and too planning. And then even if you do get it done and submitted, it's probably not going to be good enough to get funded. There's my don't leave any questions blank. There's a provided checklist. I always encourage people to proofread your application, because if it is riddled with lots of errors, even spelling errors, poor writing, it just doesn't reflect very well. I'm not saying that the committee doesn't choose, like they'll just throw it out, because they won't, but it definitely helps give a better presentation on your project, that you've taken the time to make sure that your application is readable, that it is correct grammar, and it's just a better first impression, you could say, a favorable impression to the committee. Please double check your math on your budgets. It does not calculate it automatically for you. Copy yourself or a friend when you submit. I do also want to say, I think this was added in there so that you can show when you submitted it. However, if we never get it, or if there's a delay in getting it to us, the timestamp is when it arrives to us, not when you sent it. That's why I encourage everyone to get it in, not at 4:59, because it might not actually get to us until after 5 p.m. Worry about that. Okay, so the grant is available on our webpage. It is required to be submitted via email anymore. We don't accept hand applications because we are not still in the office. We are still all teleworking currently. And the webpage is there, but if you just do a quick Google search for Young Farmer Grant, Texas Department of Agriculture, it'll come up. Okay. We could do questions now, or we can wait till the end. Matt, you tell me.
Yeah, I think just to make sure that Leah and Tim have some, ample time, because I'm sure folks have lots of questions. I think maybe if we just want to move on to their presentations. But thanks so much, Kat. I really appreciate your attention to all these details, because I know the devil's in the details with these sorts of things. So.
Absolutely. Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing then. Ooh,
Cool.
There we go.
Leah, would you like to hop on and go first?
I'm going to share my screen. Watch me.
Great.
Maybe. There it is. So just a disclaimer, my experience was in my PowerPoint says 2016, but I was just doing the math and it was indeed 2015. So everything that Kat just talked about, most of it applied. I think there's some things that are a little different, but I can just go through what we did with the opportunity when we had it, and talk about my experience. So we requested funds for a bunch of things, fruit and nut trees and native trees, bobcat and excavator rental to build berms for planting the trees. We did that because we are on blackland clay out here, and I have an arboriculture background, and I didn't want to be planting this huge investment in really thick, dense soil. So we wanted to give those roots a little bit more access to air, and so I only wanted to plant them on berms, and so that was a big undertaking because we had to create those. The grant included compost and mulch for the tree plantings, a ton of irrigation, not just in our orchard, but out in our pasture, because we raise pigs and we wanted to be able to move them further out in the pasture, but they needed water. We asked for extra rainwater tanks and adding gutters to our barn, but I put those in red because we didn't actually get to that, which was the fact the grant was really flexible and allowed us to scratch that at the last minute it took a lot of stress off of our plates, because we were kind of getting short on the time. We did reside our barn. The barn that we had purchased had siding that was rotting and wasn't going to last a whole lot longer. So we were able to pay for new siding. And then we're also able to pay for the cover crops to sow into all of that bare dirt that we created by digging the berms for all of the trees. It was a pretty big project. I was really surprised when I got the email that said I got it. And I was like, oh crap, got to get to work now. But in hindsight, it was absolutely the one thing that helped get us going as a farm. And we wouldn't be where we are today without having this help and having this get us on our feet. Let's see if I can move this slideshow. Maybe, there we go. Oh, so when I applied, I think I just saw on CATS that the business plan was optional. Also at that point in time, I think the letters of recommendation were optional. But basically, if it was on there as optional, I wanted to do it because that increases your chances if you can go above and beyond the requirements. And I was the thought of a business plan was really daunting because we had only owned our property for like 7 months, and we kept changing our minds about what we wanted to do. And so I wasn't really sure that I knew what I was doing, and it made me really nervous to create a business plan, but it was okay in the end. It's fine. So I'm just going to talk about some parts of that were challenging to me and that you should probably consider when you're writing this. The first one is you want to think about who is your farm and what does it do. What is your mission statement? What is your holistic goal? However you like, what is it that drives you to be a farm? You know, I think that it's important to show the passion behind why you're doing what you're doing and not just be purely business. You know, show some excitement about your plan and what you've accomplished so far that makes you a good candidate for this money. And how does this money move you towards, or how does this project move you towards your holistic goal and fulfill your farm's mission? Describing the project is great to describe it in a lot of detail, but you want to really dive into why you're doing that and why it's going to be a good investment of TDA's money. Why do you deserve these dollars to invest into your farm? How is it going to make the land, the people, and the animals in a better spot? And why is this important? But also, how is it going to make your farm profitable? They don't want to throw a bunch of money at a project that ultimately doesn't have a really solid business plan and might really easily lose money if it's not well thought out. Budget. I was really stressed about this because, you know, I mean, I don't really have to explain why it's stressful. It's hard to come up with a really solid number, but it's totally okay to use estimated guesses, come to find out. One thing that I tried to dive into a lot in my business plan was how I could reduce costs, and that I absolutely thought of everything. And what I mean by reduce cost is trying to make this project more than just a project. It's more than me calling a contractor saying I want this fence built. It's getting your community involved on your farm. We use the use of volunteers to do a lot of our work. We made really big fun parties out of all of the volunteer work that had to be done. We invited everybody out. People could plant trees. And then, you know, it helped us stick to our timeline better by having so many hands in the field. We saved costs by buying bare root trees and by buying in bulk. And that was something I went over in the business plan, was describing like how I'm trying to make this as affordable as possible. We did some trade work. The person who operated our bobcat and our excavator got a whole pig when it was all said and done. And then we tried to make it educational as well, which I thought went pretty far, because it's, again, more than just me calling somebody and saying I want this built. It's, hey, let's hire a professional, come out here, show the community what we're doing, why this is important, and teach people about how to plant their own trees, how to select trees for this area, how to prune trees, and we made it more interactive and more like a workshop. The mentor, so when I applied, they were called mentor letters. So that's why I use that term. I tried to find people who are experts in the field who already, who the person reviewing my application could say, okay, she's maybe admitting that she's new at this, but she has sought the help of experts, people who know a lot about this topic and people who are going to help her achieve all these goals and do this right. And also they could vouch for my community involvement. And I really, really think that that's an important thing, even if you're not asking for money, is to volunteer as much time as you can, given your life situation, into community organizations. At the time I submitted this application, I was the regional director for TAFCA. I spent hours and hours planning a conference, well, 2 different conferences actually, which is the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Conference. And so that being able to say that I put my own personal time into the farming community as a whole, I think that goes really far when you're asking people for money and promising that you're going to do something good with it. This is my business plan. It was 2 pages. So, you know, don't get weirded out if you write all your stuff down and you don't have a novel. That's okay. There were some things that I was worried about that ended up being just fine. Like I said, the budget, even as we were going through racking up receipts, counting things, there were some things that were over and some things that were under. And I definitely lost some sleep over it, but it was super silly because it was unnecessary. And the folks that were reviewing my invoices were, as long as I communicated with them, it was fine. We changed the project plan. You know, like I said in the beginning, we scrapped a couple items. We didn't buy the extra rain tanks. We didn't put gutters on the barn like we had projected that we would, but that was fine. I also, in my budget, when I was applying and in my project plan, I mentioned certain consultants and companies that I would use, and I didn't end up using those because it didn't work out and it was totally fine. So don't stress about that. And then also I changed the timeline a little bit. I think I had more time to complete it, maybe back then, not sure. So here's a picture of our property when we bought it, and then an image of kind of what it looks like today, thanks to the grant. And the next couple of pictures go into that more, so I'm just gonna slide on by. This was our first volunteer event, planting trees, mulching, composting. I think we had, it was a full day event, Friday through Sunday. We had people camp out. We had over 150 people that came and went throughout the weekend. We fed all these people. We had lots of fun, and we turned it into a learning event as well. And then we also, you know, helped fulfill our grant and our mission. This is our property. The red roof is our barn, and our house is up here. And then I added some lovely clip art to help you envision what our vision was or is. This is during the second workday. So all of those white lines you see, those are irrigation lines being laid out in our pasture. The berms had already been dug, and those are vegetated nicely with the cover crops that we purchased. We planted trees that day, but they aren't big enough yet. So that's why I added clip art. Oh, I forgot to add the ditch witch that we rented. That was part of this grant as well. And that's what helped us dig all of those trenches. And then, you know, our ultimate goal is to be able to move our pigs through these alleys in between the berms. This was, someone brought their drone to one of our work days, which was really cool. They got some shots. This is of our, I guess we were just composting and mulching at this point in time. Here it is from overhead again. You can see these little holes were all dug for trees. These were our turkeys. They're long gone. This is the group that came out for the second workday. So the first workday we had in February, and then the second one we had in October. This is the October one. And then this is a picture of what everything looks like in our fruit tree orchard, which is up closer by the house. It's about I don't know, 3/4 of an acre. The first is what it looked like with all the cover crops right after we dug it and spread mulch. And then the bottom picture is what it looks like today. we get lots of fruit off of it now. And right now we're making, I'm making more value added products. That's kind of the approach I'm taking until the trees really produce a lot. So I'm making fruit-based hot sauces that we can sell at market with our pork and our chicken and our turkey and eggs. And another cool thing about the orchard that I didn't put in the grant that we've been using it for is for an increase. We added production through egg layers and then also turkeys. And so we're able to use the orchard with getting those birds more access to fresh pasture as well. I think that's my last slide. Now pass it to Tim, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much, Leah. That was a really awesome presentation. I've been to your house for meetings a couple times, but I don't think I've ever made it past the house. So
Yeah, it's
now
always been dark too. So
yeah, but
hey, COVID is going to be over soon, and I'll have y'all all out. Maybe we can mulch some trees.
yeah, let's do it. Sweet. Well, yeah,
Awesome.
Tim, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. So I am I've started the process for mine, but I don't have near the slide that Leah has showing the completed project and its development. So I've got one for you as a reference, so y'all have some visuals on the different things that are going to be within my grant. Can everybody hear me all right? Because this is the first time I've tried to speak. Okay. So I'll share screen as well. And can you see me all right?
It hasn't quite popped up yet, but
Okay.
I find these things take a little time sometimes.
Share screen.
Unless, I'm wondering if Carolina,
It's disabled for now, but I can talk about the project, and if we get that.
Sorry. I thought I had given you the powers.
It's okay.
1 second.
So I'm Tim Auld. I live on some family land out southeast of Lockhart, and I am now leasing about 94 acres from the family that's been in commodity cropping my entire life and probably even longer. So my grant project was based on a startup of a farm enterprise. Nothing is on the ground, and it was solely based on developing the infrastructure needed to get animals out at the place and get started. So I was the second round of 2020. I'm currently, our second quarter of the grant process has just ended, and we're submitting our reports, and we're getting ready to start the third. Some of the things that I asked for in my grant were going to be land lease payment assistance, equipment lease payments for the trencher for livestock watering line project that I'm looking to do. I have some cross fencing like the step-in posts and the reels and the charger type equipment for doing the rotational grazing with sheep. I have a small budget for livestock purchase, as well as livestock watering system materials, some cover crop seeds, and then other miscellaneous small equipment. My total project cost was around $12,000. And like what Leah's experience has been, when I wrote this, I was throwing out all the projects that I knew I needed to do that would qualify for the expenditures. And I asked, and as I was writing the project, if I'm thinking that I need to kind of shrink the things that I think I'm going to submit as, can I take that 12,000 and turn it into just 3 projects versus spreading it out? And it seemed to have some flexibility like that, as long as I follow the procedures and the timelines and that kind of thing. So currently, the only thing that has moved is I've got the land lease payment that's happened, and I'm getting ready to start purchasing materials for the 2 big projects, which are the livestock irrigation and the fencing. And I anticipate most of my expenditures happening in the 3rd and 4th quarter, just timing of school and the rhythm of when I'm expecting to have livestock on the ground and those kinds of things. I completely felt the same way as Leah going through the process of, planning ahead of time and looking at that application and rereading it and starting to get your letters, those mentor letters, get those requests out much sooner than you think you need. Just to be respectful to those that you think you're going to get the letters from. And it gives them the opportunity to really sit down and take a quality time doing it. I use the budget and the business plan form directly off of the application, and just was as detailed as I could. Like Leah said, about just being passionate about what you're interested in doing and talking about your connections within the community, and I feel are probably important because I talked about those things as well, and did my best to describe my markets based on the participation that I've had in the Central Texas Farmers Co-op being one of the staple markets that I'm looking to market into, as well as some small local businesses and wholesale outlets, as well as your conventional sell barns. And the enterprise that I'm looking to start up first is a sheep enterprise, and then quickly follow with some other multi-species operations that I kind of talked about a little bit in this application. So that's kind of a gist of what I have for talking about my experience. I'm right in the middle of it right now, and I'm up for Q&A sessions as well, and we can go from there.
Cool. Did you have a photo to show us? I think Carolina might have enabled you if you wanted to.
I have the one slide. I didn't do a photo of the farm, but here's what let me get this like that. I'm trying not to share your my own Zoom. How's that working?
There it is. Cool. Yeah, that's a good little overview.
So that's kind of what I was just describing. I'm working with neighbors who have the skill set on the trenching side for, saving. I do carpentry work for a living. I plan on doing all my infrastructure. So for me, this grant was about assistance on the materials purchase, and then doing my installation, and then partnering with my neighbors who have some of the heavier equipment to execute some of the things. So.
Cool. Well, sweet. Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
That was really cool to kind of get an update on where you're at in the project. Sounds like the rubber's really about to hit the road, so it must be really exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Sweet. So yeah, I think if we do want to go ahead and open it up for questions, I think if anyone has a particular question for a particular person, if you maybe want to just address them, and yeah, we can open it up.
So what's your advice for someone that is not coming from an agriculture background at all? So actually I know Tim. I didn't realize Tim was going to be here. And I think I don't know, I think I saw Katie here too, but I'm a graduate student at Texas State. I come from a humanities background, though I studied philosophy and English. And then I just kind of stumbled upon this stuff and thought it was something meaningful to pursue. So yeah, what would be, anybody could answer this, but what's your advice for somebody that doesn't have any agriculture background whatsoever, that wants to kind of get their foot in the door, maybe get something started at some point?
I can kind of take that. I think what the committee would look for is have any formal education, which is not a problem. I mean, that's not going to preclude you, but they're going to want to know where you are going to get the knowledge you need. So education opportunities actually are an allowable cost. So if there's like a week-long, I'm going to use the example of a goat camp because I know this actually exists, a week-long goat camp that will get you the nuts and bolts of more details of pursuing and getting into it. They will fund that. They won't fund like formal classes per se, like if you're trying to get your your PhD or whatever. I know a lot of people have grad school, but you know, like A&M actually has quite a few certain, I don't call them certification classes, but I know that they have classes that, you know, like through their extension offices, and I think they would want to see those types of activities. Or I know Leah mentioned things like mentors, you know, where you're getting, you know, where are you going to get your information? Like, are you going to partner with somebody that's going to be able to mentor you in the process, which we have seen as well. So
I could add to that from what I think helped my application. Doug, was Leah and I had both taken a Holistic Management International course, which was a whole farm and ranch planning. And I think that I included that in my application, as well as I did a lot of volunteering for the experience of working animals and starting to build that livestock husbandry experience. And I would assume that based on reading the application, that it was important for them to see that they're not setting us up for failure by approving funds to build something that we don't have the experience to manage, whether it's the financial side of it or whether it's the agricultural side of it. So between HMI, volunteering on people's ranches as ranch hands from the bottom, like trying to get that confidence and build that confidence for those things, as well as lots of conferences and other small type workshops, like she's saying, starting to do that now before you're trying to apply for it is probably important. And it may not need all of that, but probably at least being able to show that you're serious about it and that you're willing to go after the education if you don't already have it. And I can send me an email, or I can send you an email of some of the conferences that I know that happen here regionally that'll start getting you connected to those people. And Leah mentioned Tofka's a good one. There's 3 or 4 of them here in Central Texas that'll get you right there in the group of farmers and ranchers that you can get into those opportunities.
And I'll add that that I didn't know what I was doing when we started this, and I found people who I admired and I liked what they were doing, and I just contacted them out of the blue and was like, hey, I need help. Here's my situation. We just bought this property and now I don't know what to do. Will you teach me? Can I come help you? Can I come buy product from you and talk to you? And that, and then in turn, those people who kind of helped me get started, I asked them for those mentor letters of recommendation. And they spoke to that in their letter of recommendation, was that, Leah is passionate about this, and she has, she's self-motivated. She's contacted me and reached out to me and asked her to consult with her and advise her on this project. In fact, that's exactly what one of my letters said.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful.
I have a question for Kat. Once a deliverable, or I think you guys call them measurables, are achieved, do they have to be maintained through the entire 15-month term of the contract?
not necessarily. I mean, if you buy 15 cows, we hope you continue to have 15 cows. but if again, really that's the goal. And I will say that sometimes people exceed their goals and sometimes people don't meet their goals for various reasons. Projects change. I'm just going to run with my cow example. If you wanted to buy 15 cows, but the price of cattle have gone up that much and you can only buy 10 cows with the same amount of money, well, that happens. And as long as you tell us why, it's not just, well, I just didn't want to buy 10 cows or 15 cows. I just decided not to. But there's valid reasons. As Leah and both Tim have said, as long as you guys, as our grantees, are really communicative with us, we will work with you to make those changes. So the measurables, you know, we love it when people exceed their goals, meet their goals, but we're also realistic. Agriculture is variable. So I did notice in the chat there was a question. How can we get more funding for YFG? I think this is from Katie. You know, that is a great question. I actually don't know how they determine the 300,000 marker. I don't know if it is a rule set by the TAFA board. That is just the amount that they allot in their budget every year. I don't know. It also could be, I don't think it's written into the statute. The funding for these programs is extremely complicated and is way above my pay grade. But you know, I do know that coming up, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a teaser. TDA has received actually a bunch of funding, and we are going to be launching some new grant programs. They're not going to be long-term grant programs. They're probably going to be more short-term, but I do know that one of them is for like equipment, like bigger pieces of equipment and projects. And I don't know, they're still looking at infrastructure, but infrastructure gets really complicated because of laws and stuff and things we have to track. So definitely, if you're not kind of in tune or on one of the TDA listservs, like sign up for our emails, I definitely highly suggest that you do that. You can do that on our website, because I don't know when they're coming down. They're still in the planning purposes, but they might be some additional sources of funding that we don't usually have available. So.
Great. I think Amy had a question.
Yeah. Hi. I was just wondering, if you are approved for this grant, do you sort of have a single point of contact? Like, are you working with one grant officer, or are you just submitting, you know, receipts and invoices and vouchers on a quarterly basis, and it could be going to a number of people?
So there's two of us that normally work on this grant. So I'm the primary, and then my colleague Nora is the other secondary contact. And for like instance, right now, specialty crop has like my brain completely consumed, because I'm reviewing the applications to get those off to the reviewers. And so right now she is pretty much taking care of all of the almost all the correspondence as well as the reimbursements, but it's 99% of the time going to be one of the two of us, unless we decide to move on from TDA, which I'm good.
I'll go next. And my question's for you, Kat. How much does geography factor in to the decision to fund a grant? You're representing your county, and so how much does that matter?
So that is actually something that the committee does look at. We do provide them, when we provide them the review booklets, we actually do a map of every single application county, so that they can, like, because a lot of things they would like to know that they're actually being dispersed. There obviously is a big concentration of smaller farmers in Central and East Texas. When you get out into West Texas, they're going to be a lot larger. Now, I mean, but again, we fund all over the state, so I'm not going to say that if they're looking at a project and they're like, well, this one's out in West Texas, this one's in Central Texas, I think we need to fund out in West Texas. They're looking at more than that, but they definitely want to make sure that the dollars are going statewide and not just a specific area.
Do you usually have a pretty good representation statewide from applications? Or is that challenging?
It's challenging. We do have our field reps. There's each region in Texas, and they do a really good job at helping to promote Young Farmer Grant all throughout the state, and making those connections when they meet people that qualify, or you know, that might be interested in. I will say that I think West Texas is probably, I don't want to say the least, because I mean, we have a lot of projects in the El Paso area and the Lubbock area. But again, a lot of those counties are pretty sparsely populated. However, there's a lot of cattle projects out there. So, but yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty well balanced. They tried anyways.
Do you have you had mushroom farmers apply for the grant and been accepted?
Let's see here.
Or is it something that you would accept in the future if you haven't yet?
They would definitely accept mushroom farmers. I'm trying to think if I've come across any in the couple years I've been doing this. I don't think so. We've done a lot of like hydroponic, leafy greens, aquaponics, a lot of those kinds of projects. Yeah, but I do know mushroom farming is actually becoming quite the thing, certainly around here in Austin. I've I've come across in other grant projects. I hope that they apply for this one because they qualify for this one. But I'm sorry, obviously I'm losing light, so my screen is getting darker and darker.
Question, just because it kind of took me by surprise. You said that that the grant has helped like exotic ranches.
Mhm.
Can you talk more about that and like how that falls under agriculture?
That's a good question. A lot of times some of these ranches, they do dual, they have cattle, and then they also do exotic deer. And it might not always be exotic, but they're hunting operations. I'm not exact, I can't actually give you the exact terminology of how it fits under an agricultural operation, but they do fit under the definition. So, I mean, if they're raising, if you're like raising zebra and gazelle just to host people at your farm and or your zebra petting zoo, that doesn't qualify. I mean, I also think that there also might be a meat market, you know, a niche market for the venison and those types of meats. And so that's another way that it might qualify. This is a very random thing, but with the big freeze that just happened, the axis deer farms were completely decimated because they could not survive the cold, which is pretty sad. But and that actually brings up a good point, because we actually had a young farmer grant this round who was going to go into axis deer, and because of the freeze, she's actually going to switch her project because she decided that it wasn't a good investment. So we're working with her to change her focus.
Resiliency.
I'm sorry, Tim?
We have to work on that resiliency.
Yes, exactly. And since I have a second, I will, because Carolina also mentioned, you know, the TAFCA Winter Storm Relief Fund. I will say, people that are involved with TAFCA, you guys have done an amazing job fundraising. I was watching your the GoFundMe. I was like, wow, that's awesome. But the Texas Department of Agriculture also has a relief fund called Star Fund, and it is open to all 254 counties. So if your farm, or if you know people who's sustained damage as a result from the winter storm, like let's say everything, all your greenhouse, like your high tunnel was smashed with all the snow and you're going to have to replace it, all your plants died and you have to replant all your plants, you have to buy new seeds, buy new fertilizer. The Star Fund does help cover those costs. Again, it's a dollar for dollar matching grant up to $4,000. So it's not a huge amount, but it does help if you had to like have irrigation lines repaired, replace pipes, those types of things are covered. So
yeah, and that's for business expenses, correct?
yes,
So,
it does have to be an agricultural operation, not your like personal flower garden.
And so for the TAFCA and Partners Fund, because it's actually 8 different organizations, universities, and other groups all over Texas, we had to set it up in a way that it was only open, it was only able to be used for household expenses, but you do have to be an independent family farmer in order to apply to it. But we're going to be closing the application round 1 here in the next few days. So definitely, if you have a farm friend or if you personally experience some damage and can just use a little bit of help paying your bills, paying medical bills, if your car got busted during the freeze for whatever reason, that's an appropriate use for that. So and we have been sending to every single person who is granted through our program, which is, we're nearing 100 people so far. We're also sending the Star Fund. Yeah.
We've only received 10 applications, and
What?
I understand ours is a little bit, maybe it's a bigger application.
Oh, okay.
But the one thing I will say about our application, which I do encourage people to actually, we can pre-approve people for repairs. So they don't have to have already had the repairs to submit the application. They can just submit estimates. It's going to be $4,000 to repair my irrigation line. Here's the estimate. And I highly encourage people to do that because it's a first come, first serve. We only have so much money. Again, it's through private donations entirely. 100% of donations go back out to disaster relief. And when we're out of money, we'll be out of money. Now we're sitting at we've had some very large donations from some of the ag banks from Texas and some of the big foundations, which is really amazing because they've beefed up our fund. So we're able to, so definitely get the word out, help get the word out. If they need help with the application, have them call me because it's another grant that I oversee and can help them through that application process.
That's great. Thank you.
I had a question about some of the seemingly capital expenditures. We talked about this last year, if you recall, and I thought they were kind of fascinating. Some of them were like possibly exceptions to the whole capital expenditure rule. And you had mentioned something like fencing and then high tunnels. And I couldn't recall if there was anything else. Those were the two on top of mind.
Yeah, it is kind of bizarre because fencing is usually considered a capital improvement. High tunnels and greenhouses are actually not considered capital improvements because they are considered a non-permanent structure. Even if you have a pretty permanent greenhouse with a foundation and everything, we do, I think it's based off the IRS determination of what it is. So, but high tunnels are definitely not permanent. Those are allowable. Now, the thing with high tunnels, though, with this new rule that they've put in place about $5,000, if you're going to buy a high tunnel en masse, which is $7,500, it's not going to be allowed. Now, if you break it up and are like, I'm going to buy the plastic, and then for $2,000, then I'm going to buy the poles for $1,000. We could make that work. That's so that's one thing you have to consider with some of those expenses. Fencing is not considered equipment, and so that doesn't fall under that $5,000 rule. And that is something that it's only equipment that $5,000 cap actually comes into play. Beyond that, I can't really think of any other major exceptions. I think digging the well is usually the question I get asked most, if they can dig a well, because it's usually, you know, what people need. And unfortunately, digging a well is not allowed. So.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just dropped, since Kat, you brought up high tunnels, NRCS has a program for getting high tunnels, and Food Shed Investors is this like group of folks who know stuff about business and food things, which they probably would die if they heard me describe it that way. Sorry, you guys. But they are working with farmers who apply to the NRCS grant because it's 100% recoup from NRCS. So you have to go through, like, obviously there are stipulations. You have to go through an approved vendor. You have to pay for it up front. and then you get the money returned upon an inspection. But Foodshed Investors is working with farmers to help that upfront cost, since then that money gets back to them since it gets returned. So just another option for you to look into if that's something that you're looking at, and maybe in addition to or instead of the, so you can focus your grant application on other things.
That made me think of, I wanted to kind of describe my mindset as I was going through this application, because there's so many different funding opportunities out there. And I think one of the most overwhelming parts for me was like, I was in the process of applying for the EQIP, side of things for maybe some livestock irrigation support, maybe some cover cropping, different things like that. Then there was like the Chipotle and National Young Farmers Coalition grant that they started last year, and I was like getting in on that one. And then there was a FACT grant. And so sitting down to do this application, knowing that I had, some savings to rely on, and then there was opportunities for other funding sources, but it was hard to narrow in on like which dollars I wanted to ask for in this project to leverage towards something that I couldn't potentially utilize the dollars for on this grant if I even get it. That's one of the things that, like, sitting down, taking some time when you're doing your budget, like, should I ask for cover crops in this TDA grant because EQIP could possibly cover them? Well, I didn't get accepted into the last fall's EQIP program, so I'm glad that I put a small budget in there. And I may not even decide to do cover crops this season anyways, but it's like, you got to spend some time kind of thinking through how to leverage those dollars. And then if there's some, that way you don't overlap them, or, does that make sense what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Carolina's popping some more grant stuff over in the chat over there. And I was going to mention also, just as far as like resources for different grants and things like that, we're currently working on revamping our website, and that's one of the key things that we want it to be, is sort of a landing spot for young farmers in particular to have like a resource page with links to the different grants and things like that. But yeah, I think that is something, as we were talking about those things in particular, high tunnels and cover crops and all of that, the EQIP program seems like it's also sort of parallel, and the two could potentially intersect. But yeah, definitely when you're thinking about a project, sort of exploring all the different avenues is the way to go. I had one question. I know we're running a little short on time, but I was wondering, Kat, looking like at Leah's project, for example, it seemed like a lot of what she was installing, were irrigation and trees and things that weren't necessarily going to be like turning a profit within the next like year or something like that. So I'm wondering if when you have the business plan that you're putting together, do projects get prioritized if the sort of return on investment is going to be in a shorter time span or anything like that, or does that factor in at all?
I don't think that factors in. I mean, that is one thing in the business plan that they do look at, is how well do you know what you're doing? How if fruit trees are a multi-year investment, and the people and the committee that looks at this, they are all either in agriculture themselves, agricultural education, agricultural banking. So they're pretty familiar with most industries that are here in Texas, and so they're going to be pretty realistic. If you're going to assume that you're going to start making $100,000 off of fruit trees in the first year, they're going to be like, maybe this person doesn't quite know what maybe they need more education. And that is one thing that the committee has requested of TDA, is trying to put together more resources for some of these young farmers that are putting forth requests, because they do need more mentoring, pretty much. Not that we can't fulfill that mentoring, but just maybe more resources of where they can go. like your group, which is amazing. I do refer people over to y'all when I talk to some young farmers. So, but as far as if they're going to fund something that has a shorter ROI, no, they're going to look at realistic expectations and more. Is this project eventually going to get them where they want to go? So, you know, those measurables, like we'll take the fruit tree example. You know, you're going to start with 0 fruit trees, you're going to go 15 fruit trees. Even if your eventual goal is 500 bushels, they know you're not going to get that within that time frame. And that's part of that reporting part is, okay, I've purchased my 15 trees, you know, in 3 years, we're hoping to have 500 bushels or whatever it is. As you can tell, I come from a farming background, but I am not actually a farmer. So I make up a lot of my examples.
Cool. Well, yeah, great. Thank you for that. And Leah popped in over in the chat box that she had sort of explained that with the kind of permaculture system that she was installing, that she was going to be able to accommodate more animals at a given time. So I guess that does sort of, at least for specific expenses like digging the berms and things like that, that you would be kind of giving a business backed reason for why you're making certain decisions. So, so even if it's not like, you know, we're going to be selling 200 pounds of peaches next year, it makes sense to be laying things out in that way. So,
right. And, you know, one thing I will add as well is that I did get a question one time is like, does your project have to be novel? Does it have to be like a new idea that you're trying? It doesn't. Now, they will look at that and be like, well, that's a new way to approach it as long as you've kind of provided the background information of why you're going to try something new. But it doesn't have to be a novel, new way to grow peach trees. You can be like, I want to, you know, tried and true ways are just as important as integrating new management. Now they are going to look at sustainability. Is your project sustainable, not only for you, but the environment? You know, if you're not poisoning the ground and those types of things. So they do, I mean, like Leah said, you know, it's a multifaceted, and we see a lot of those. We see a lot where they're diversifying their operations. A cotton farmer wanted to put in cattle because they're running out of water, and so she was looking for other ways and cover crops. She was doing a multi thing, and that was her whole point, was to diversify her operations so that she's not so dependent on one thing.
excellent. Tim, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say that's encouraging to hear, that people are really starting to consider the integrated approach to agriculture, you know, in this region.
Definitely. Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Looks like we're right here at 8 o'clock. So do appreciate everyone coming and hanging out tonight. And Carolina, are we gonna post this recording somewhere, or where will it live in case folks wanted to share it? She might have stepped away. Well, anyway, we will post somewhere where this recording lives. We'll probably send it out via the listserv and maybe include it in the next newsletter or something like that. So yeah, again, just want to give a big thank you to Kat, as always. You're so helpful and knowledgeable. I really appreciate it. And Tim and Leah, was both really cool to hear from both of y'all about, you know, kind of where you're at. Leah, 5 years on into your project, and Tim kind of, you know, right at the outset. So it's really cool to see how this grant can support people kind of no matter what stage they're at. So this is year 2 of this panel, and I hope that we can all get together and do it again next year and maybe get an update on where folks are at. So thank you all very much. Kat, did you want to say anything to close?
I just wanted to thank you all for having me again. I'm always happy to talk about our programs, and hopefully we'll have more soon.
Great.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
thank you.
Sweet. Well, we'll see y'all later.
Thank y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Everybody,
Bye.
have a good one.